Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have a look at the latest from the live radar, run through the latest weather warnings. We've got multiple weather warnings, one for Scotland and one for southern England for rainfall over the next few days as a consequence of Storm Babet last week. With all that heavy rainfall, it means the ground is extremely saturated, so any heavy pulses of rainfall are going to warrant weather warnings, and that's what we've seen this week so far and what we can need to continue to see through the rest of this week as well. As we're seeing the latest UKV, we'll be able to see the rainfall that is warranting those warnings, and of course have a look at the other rainfall around and the temperatures, as it is looking like it's going to be turning cooler, if not colder, in the north, and we are going to see more rainfall coming in. And we could even see a bit more rainfall further southwards, with centre of the lows moving in perhaps for the weekend, giving heavy showers and perhaps persistent rainfall, or more persistent rainfall at times as well. The longer term pattern is continuing to look fairly interesting. As we have alluded to over the last few videos, there is a signal, a pretty strong signal in fact, for some northern blocking. And as we've said, it isn't going to massively affect us in terms of not going to give us cold weather, snowy weather like we'd expect, or we'd sort of think about in winter time, but instead it's going to give us colder than average conditions, and it's going to stall these low pressure systems and could give us recurring bouts of heavy rainfall. I don't think it will be similar to Storm Babet in terms of that intensity, but those similar sort of patterns where low pressure systems move in, stall, and sort of dissipate away while dumping all their rain on our shores is looking like a real, quite likely scenario in the next week or two. But as I said, we'll explore that more in the second half of the video. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, which do like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. Now, if you start on the live radar, you can see we are kind of in between weather systems at the moment. We've got a few showers in the north, as we are seeing some slight easterly flow developing here on the northern edge of the lows. Already we're starting to see that blocking take some sort of influence, pushing the weather fronts further southwards. As you can see, all this rainfall across France and northern Europe, not over into Scotland, as you'd expect if we had a flat jet stream. This means the jet stream is descending slightly further southwards with more of a block out to our north. But we'll be able to see that in a bit more detail when we'll have a look at the longer range in a minute. But we are just in between weather systems. For that heavy rain overnight last night, in the end it actually was much further westwards than initially forecast, and as we saw in the video, and we did actually see an amber warning issued for the Isle of Wight heading into sort of Portsmouth, Southampton area, as we did see the rainfall stall in this area. We did see some flooding issues in those regions. Again, an event that we knew there was going to be heavy rain in southern England, but it really was a nowcast sort of situation, as the rainfall did stall and didn't progress further eastwards than initially anticipated. And that, again, could happen with more of these systems. We're seeing more heavy rain move in overnight tonight, and again, more of that will be across southern England, and we have again got another weather warning for a similar region here. And again, I do think that's simply because of the very saturated ground, meaning flooding is more likely. And then we have another weather warning for eastern Scotland, as we are going to start to see some rainfall spiralling in as well. But today has actually been generally a decent day, but I do think it is going to be in isolation, as things are going to be deteriorating through the rest of this week. Temperatures generally average for the time of year, as we have seen in the latest UKV over the last few videos. The temperatures look really stationary over the next few days, as we are just pretty much staying in an average air mass. But as I said, as we head into the weekend and start of next week, the north is going to be cooling down, and eventually the south will cool down as well, as we start to see that colder air undercutting the low pressure systems, as we do see that blocking start to take hold. Now, if you look at the weather warnings, we've got this first rainfall warning, 4 a.m. tomorrow until midday tomorrow, again covering a lot of that amber warning zone, but also extending further eastwards towards Brighton. And again, further heavy rainfall falling into wet or saturated ground could cause some flooding and disruption. Again, only an 8-hour warning, but we could see 20 to 30 millimetres, maybe as high as 40 millimetres, actually quite high impacts and low likelihood. So again, will be very interesting to see what happens with that. Do make sure you keep up to date with the weather warnings, because again, with this event, it could shift and move. But we'll have a look at the latest UKV in a minute. And then we've got this weather warning issued for eastern Scotland, again, where we saw the biggest impacts from Storm Babet, with the red warning issued in this area. It's from midday tomorrow until midday on Saturday. So a 48-hour warning very high impact, low likely, and again, for tens of millimetres of rainfall over multiple days, falling into very saturated ground, essentially meaning there is the chance of flooding. And again, in isolation, this probably wouldn't warrant a warning, but it's because of everything that's happened in the last couple of weeks warrants this warning. And as I said, it continues all the way into Saturday before it expires, but I do expect to see more warnings issued because we are going to see a lot more rainfall in the coming weeks. Now, if you look at the latest UKV, if we do start on the precipitation, you can see that heavy rainfall in the south last night dissipating away, and through the rest of the day, it's actually been fairly decent, apart from some of those showers in eastern Scotland where we are seeing a bit of an easterly flow move in. But there, it's not particularly heavy, but it is pretty drab out there. Through this evening, heavy rain moves in, and as we head into tomorrow, we could see some heavy rain and heavy showers develop across that south coast. So you can see some lines of persistent heavy rain through the morning. That's why we've got that weather warning issue. Not a big wall of rain, but locally could be some really quite heavy persistent rainfall as that moves in. And you see lots of heavy showers spiralling around low pressure as we head into tomorrow afternoon, and lots more oranges developing within these showers, which is showing more heavy torrential downpours within this. And then you can see why we got the warning issued for eastern Scotland as we start to see some persistent rain move in there. It doesn't look particularly large, but it does last many days, many hours here, and the general showery outlook lasts many days. Into Friday, more showers around. Could be a bit of persistent rain through southern parts of Wales through the afternoon. But again, just lots of heavy showers. Could even be some thundery showers in the southeast there. And then as we head into Saturday, more heavier rain at times, especially in the south. But if we do look at this, a lot of these showers are further southwards. As I said, because that jet stream is shifting further southwards by a couple hundred miles. Essentially meaning Scotland goes colder, but also slightly drier with less showers. The south, seeing a lot more heavy showers closer to the low pressure systems. And again, into Saturday evening, into Sunday, we just about miss the low pressure system here that does stay more out into the channel. Again, that could deviate, still being 3 or 4 days away. That had really impacted us significantly over the last couple of UKV runs, but this run takes it further southwards, so we'll have to verify that nearer the time. And into Sunday, again, more heavy showers for the south and persistent rain moving in there for the early hours of Monday. And you can see it kind of stalls along the M4 line there, just to the north of London. And again, could see more warnings issued. All that rain in the south. Further northwards, a slightly drier air mass, a few showers around, and even a few snow showers around as we do see that fresher easterly winds move in. And you can see that on the upper air temperatures. Look at that cold air drifting in from the north. The UKV definitely is pretty persistent with this. I must admit that a lot of the longer range runs are a little bit more pessimistic with the development of that cold air pushing in. But nevertheless, it is turning colder as we head into next working week as that blocking does get going. We'll be able to see that on the latest 2 metre temperatures again. This afternoon, temperatures widely low teens, again pretty much average for the time of year. Thursday again, low teens, maybe even mid-teens in a few spots. Again, generally average. The temperature's going to be fairly stationary over the next few days. Friday again, we're looking at low teens, maybe high single digits for Scotland. The weekend, as we head into Saturday, similar, started to cool down slightly with more rain around, more towards the high single digits to low teens. And by Sunday, look at Scotland really cooling down, mid-single digits to low single digits. Further southwards, low teens at best. So definitely starting to see that cooling trend into Saturday and Sunday, and could even get quite cold early next week, especially as we do see that cold air slowly descending further southwards. Now, if you look at the latest GFS, we'll be able to see what that is showing over the course of the next couple of weeks. Now, you can see the low pressure moving in off the Atlantic at the moment. Fairly weak and fairly slow moving. It is relatively deep, but the isobars are quite spread apart. So we're not seeing particularly strong gusty winds or significant development of weather fronts. And that's why it's a mainly showery outlook through the rest of this working week. Again, there will be persistent bands of rain, but it's mainly shower activity. You can see the blocking starting to get going towards Greenland and Iceland, and that does develop that easterly wind into the end of the weekend for Scotland, starting to bring in colder air. Again, the blocking is more significant on the UKV, and that's why that cold air descended quite far southwards. Here, you see the coldest air actually does remain offshore out to our north. So UKV is probably more optimistic, and the GFS is probably more realistic, as this is reflected more within the ensembles. This sort of below average, but not significantly below average. Beyond that, though, low pressure just sits nearby, and we could see some small low pressure systems develop through early next week, but it is turning much colder with that blocking towards Scandinavia. Longer term, though, jet stream powers up again, and look at these lows significantly stronger low pressure systems moving in off the Atlantic. Centre of these lows down to 950 millibars perhaps. The isobars very tight together, and we'd be looking at very strong gusty winds, very heavy rainfall, potentially more named storms. Again, the jet stream is being quite funny here. It is deviating, waving around, and here all the way to 384 hours, we're actually starting to bring quite a cold, even bitterly cold northerly wind in by the end of this run, on the backside of a low. Again, not a persistent pattern. Again, probably a few wintry showers in the north and maybe a frost. But nevertheless, very interesting seeing this. Again, could be setting up a very interesting first few weeks of December or end of November. This sort of pattern continues, as if we do look at the Northern Hemisphere view, there's lots of blocking around, lots of Atlantic ridging, and again, could spice things up into early winter, as we've seen in the winter look-aheads. Not what we've been sort of inferring. A lot of the winter look-aheads charts have indicated perhaps cold weather into the new year, but if this pattern does persist, there definitely is the potential. But in the meantime, it's generally going to give colder than average temperatures for the UK and very unsettled conditions. Initially showery, but as we extend into next working week and beyond, could become more stormy again, with more deeper low pressure systems moving in. Now, if you compare to the GM, again, isobars fairly spread out at the moment. Low pressure is not particularly strong, but again, could see a small low pressure system move there through Sunday. That could give heavier rain. Again, we see those easterly winds develop for Scotland. Again, that cold air gets in, but again, not quite as optimistic as the UKV is with bringing that cold air in. And into next week, it generally remains cold, especially in the north. The south could see some briefly milder upper air temperatures, but that's just going to power the weather fronts. And you can see here all the way to day 10, really quite deep low pressure systems coming in off the Atlantic, blocking, persisting to our north, trying to draw cold air southwards into the backside of these lows. And again, midwinter, we'd be very interested in this, seeing how that blocking develops. But at the moment, into mid-autumn, it really is just going to power up the jet stream, power these low pressure systems, and mean colder air masses are more likely to seep into Scotland and perhaps further southwards as well at times, bringing colder than average weather in general. Even these yellow air masses here, you can see, are generally average to below average. So it is continuing to look like quite a cold start to November. Nothing ridiculous, but quite a bit cooler than we've had at the moment. Maybe high single digits at best in places. Now, if you do compare to the Eastern WF, just to finish with the longer range charts, again, low pressure coming in off the Atlantic, not moving through particularly quickly, but by next Monday, we see more lows arrive out of the Atlantic, maybe a small pesky little low developing there. Easterly winds develop for the north, eventually getting shut off by day 10, that blocking not dominating over Greenland anymore, more up to Scandinavia. And a similar pattern to what happened with Storm Babet actually starts to take place. If we do run back the past sort of 36 hours of this run, from Thursday at midday all the way to Saturday at midnight, so 36 hours here, this low hardly moves. And again, it doesn't look significant here at this extended range, but in reality, this would produce a lot of heavy rain. The accumulated precipitation looks massive there towards day 10, with quite a bit of that falling in that 36-hour period. You see many areas go from blues to purples within that last couple of days. So again, that could cause more issues, being cold and very unsettled there, with the centre of that low down towards sort of 960 millibars, and we'd be thinking multiple more weather warnings issued for this. If we do finish by looking at the ensembles, if we do start on the latest GFS ensembles, midday run hasn't fully come out, but we'll have a look at the 6 o'clock run. As you see, generally average over the next 5 days. Into early November or next week, we start to drop below average and could go significantly below average. The UKV was getting us down to -5, so there's a few runs down there in the longer range, but nothing really in the imminent future. Remember, this is London, so it's further southwards. So anything down as a -5 level is pretty extreme actually for early November for London, almost 10 degrees below average. But you can see it is generally cold and very unsettled. Look at that into the weekend, start of next working week. Lots of big rainfall spikes, so it could be some more issues with yellow warnings or even amber warnings for rainfall. 2-meter temperatures are average at the moment, 14-15 degrees, but are quite rapidly descending into early November down to, I said, 9 or 10 degrees. And again, this will be warmer than areas further northwards, which could be down to maybe mid-single digits come early November. Again, it's inevitable. We are heading towards winter, but definitely dropping off quite quickly as we are transitioning to a much colder air mass. Sea level pressure really quite low over the next week. Seeing a lot more bumps into the longer term, which is inevitable with uncertainty. But equally, some quite deep systems here. Sunday into Monday could be a centre of the low moving in. I think area small system, but could be quite intense at the same time. Longer term, some very deep lows, but equally some higher pressure. But majority are keeping us relatively unsettled. The ECMWF ensembles are pretty similar, below average in the longer term with those upper air temperatures by a good few degrees. And look at those precipitation spikes. Massive amount of precipitation, keeping us very, very unsettled as we progress towards the end of the month into early November. So it is continuing to look like a very unsettled, wet and cold end of October and start of November. It is not looking good if you go on any outdoor plans. Things are going to continue to be really quite horrible. Going to continue to see more yellow rain warnings, perhaps even more amber warnings as well, as the rainfall isn't going to stop. It's going to continue to accumulate. Probably nowhere near as an intense as storm Babet last week, but nevertheless, still going to see tens of millimetres quite widely over the next week or two. So make sure you do stay safe out there. And if you are in flood-prone areas, or is there anything you can do to mitigate those issues, do make sure you do take action and keep an eye on those weather warnings as they are getting updated really quite frequently, at least once a day, if not 2 or 3 times a day at the moment. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you have enjoyed. If you're looking forward to winter, there are some positive signs in here, but I don't want to grasp onto that too early, as we are probably still about a month away from any cold potential. But regardless, the pattern we're seeing at the moment is relatively interesting. Just unfortunately, it's giving pretty horrible surface conditions at the moment. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you have enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.